Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, way back, to a world where the horizon stretched endlessly and the only maps were held in the minds and memories of incredible human beings. Close your eyes for a moment, if you dare, and picture yourself on a tiny outrigger canoe, bobbing on an enormous, dark ocean. The stars above are impossibly bright, a shimmering blanket of light, and below, the water whispers secrets against the hull. There's no land in sight, not a flicker of anything human-made for thousands of miles in any direction. You feel the cool spray on your face, the rhythmic sway of the craft, and an almost overwhelming sense of isolation. This isn't just a history lesson, it's an immersion. And honestly, you probably won't survive this journey if it were real, not without the ancient wisdom we're about to explore. Tonight, we're diving deep into the most mind-boggling maritime achievements of all time, the epic voyages of the Polynesian Navigators. These weren't accidental drifts or lucky bounces from island to island. Oh no. These were meticulously planned, incredibly daring expeditions across the largest ocean on Earth, long before Europeans even dreamed of crossing their own comparatively tiny Atlantic. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're listening, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself on the shores of a lush, volcanic island, perhaps Samoa or Fiji, thousands of years ago. The sun bakes the black sand, and the scent of frangipani hangs heavy in the air. You're part of a community deeply connected to the land and, even more so, to the sea. From birth, the ocean is your playground, your pantry, and your highway. You learn its moods, its rhythms, its immense power. Mainstream historical fact: Polynesian peoples, originating likely from Taiwan and then migrating through Melanesia, began their true deep ocean expansion around 3,000 years ago, eventually spreading across a triangle of the Pacific that dwarfs continents. Think about that for a second. No compass, no charts as we know them, just pure, unadulterated human ingenuity and courage. You watch as your elders gaze at the setting sun, not with idle curiosity, but with intense focus, noting its precise angle, the way the light catches the distant clouds. They are reading the world around them like an open book, a skill you are being taught from infancy. You're learning to differentiate between the subtle shades of blue in the water, signals of depth, or the presence of a reef. You're told stories of ancestors who sailed beyond the visible horizon, disappearing for weeks or months, only to return with tales of new lands, new resources, new homes. This isn't just about exploration, it's about survival, about finding new places to thrive when your current island home grows too crowded or its resources dwindle. The sheer immensity of the Pacific Ocean is almost impossible to grasp from our modern perspective. You might think, oh, it's just water. How hard can it be? But consider this. The Pacific covers nearly one-third of the surface of the entire planet. It's larger than all of Earth's land masses combined. Trying to cross it in a canoe is like trying to find a needle in a haystack if the haystack were the size of, well, a planet. And yet, they did it. Not once, but repeatedly. One quirky tidbit: some theories suggest that Polynesian navigators might have developed a form of wave cartography, essentially creating mental maps of ocean swells and their unique patterns. Almost like a fingerprint for different areas of the sea. Imagine feeling your way across the ocean, not just seeing it. The initial expansion from Southeast Asia into what we now call Near Oceania, like Fiji and Tonga, was already a monumental feat. But it was the push into remote Oceania, the vast, empty stretches of the Central and Eastern Pacific, that truly defines their mastery. Historians still argue whether the initial push into remote Oceania was driven primarily by population pressure, a spirit of exploration, or perhaps even conflict, leading groups to seek new, uninhabited lands. What is clear, however, is that this wasn't a one-way trip. These were two-way voyages, with settlers often maintaining contact with their home islands for generations. You're feeling the subtle thrum of a deep, historical current, pulling you out into the unknown. You're still there, aren't you? That feeling of the vast ocean, the hum of the wind through the rigging, it stays with you. And as you gaze out, your eyes drift from the endless horizon down to the vessel beneath your feet. This isn't just any boat. It's a technological marvel, refined over centuries, the double-hulled voyaging canoe, or Waikaulua as it's known in some dialects. This wasn't some flimsy raft. It was the spacecraft of its era, designed for comfort, stability, and carrying capacity over immense distances. Imagine working on its construction. You're not just carving a log, you're meticulously shaping two parallel hulls, often made from enormous breadfruit or koa trees, lashed together with natural fibers. These aren't nails or screws holding it all together, but incredibly strong and flexible core rope, woven from coconut husks. This method, known as lashing, allowed the canoes to flex with the powerful ocean swells, rather than break. It's like the difference between a rigid building that cracks in an earthquake and one designed to sway and absorb the shock. Mainstream historical fact: these canoes could be enormous, some reportedly over 100 feet long, capable of carrying dozens of people, plants, animals, and enough provisions for months. Try building something like that with stone tools and your bare hands. The two hulls provide incredible stability, allowing for a large deck space between them. This is where life happens: cooking, sleeping, storing supplies, and tending to the precious cargo of plants and animals. You might see taro cuttings nestled in damp soil, ready to plant in new lands, or even small, grunting pigs, their legs tied, patiently waiting out the journey. Above you, a single, enormous crab claw sail catches the wind, often woven from pandanus leaves. This sail design, unique to the Pacific, is incredibly efficient, allowing the canoes to sail remarkably close to the wind, giving them excellent maneuverability. A quirky tidbit: some Polynesian canoes even featured a small, enclosed hut or shelter on the deck, providing a modicum of privacy and protection from the elements, essentially a floating micro-apartment. Building one of these leviathans was a community effort, requiring immense skill and specialized knowledge. There were master canoe builders, the Defunga, who understood the properties of different woods, the stresses of the ocean, and the intricate art of lashing. You'd spend years, perhaps even decades, learning this craft, passing down techniques from one generation to the next. It wasn't just about cutting wood. It was about understanding the soul of the tree and how it would interact with the soul of the ocean. You can almost hear the rhythmic chanting of the workers as they haul logs from the forest, the dull thud of stone adzes shaping the hulls. There's a deep respect for the materials, a spiritual connection to the land and the sea that permeates every aspect of the construction. This wasn't just engineering. It was an act of creation, imbued with purpose and sacred meaning. Historians still argue whether the development of the double-hulled canoe was a singular innovation that spread rapidly, or if similar designs evolved independently in different island groups across the vast Pacific. What is undeniable, however, is its revolutionary impact. Now, imagine launching it. The entire village gathers, pulling on thick ropes, inch by inch, as the massive vessel slides into the shimmering lagoon. The water embraces it, and a cheer erupts. This isn't just a launch, it's a commitment. A commitment to the unknown, to the perilous journey ahead, and to the future of the community it will carry. You feel the collective excitement, the underlying tension, and the immense pride in what has been achieved. These aren't just vessels, they are homes, laboratories, and lifelines, ready to carry their precious human cargo across the liquid desert. The stability of two hulls, the efficiency of the crab claw sail, the flexibility of the lashing. Every element is designed to conquer the vast, unpredictable Pacific. It's a testament to human ingenuity when faced with one of the greatest geographical challenges on Earth. And as you step aboard, you begin to feel the gentle rocking, the promise of movement, and the subtle hum of the sea beneath your feet, pulling you further into the ancient world. With the canoe now beneath your feet, ready to cast off, your gaze instinctively lifts. You're not looking at a map, a compass, or any modern instrument. You're looking at the night sky, a shimmering tapestry of stars that will become your ultimate guide. This, my friend, is where the real magic happens, where human observation and memory converge with the cosmic ballet. Polynesian navigators weren't just sailors. They were astronomers, poets, and living atlases of the heavens. Imagine yourself on the deck as darkness falls, far from any light pollution. The Milky Way stretches across the blackness like spilled glitter, and constellations you might recognize, alongside many you wouldn't, slowly wheel overhead. Your elders, the master navigators or kahuna hu keel, aren't just admiring the view. They're reading it with an intensity that would make modern astrophysicists envious. Mainstream historical fact: Polynesian navigators used a complex system of star compasses or sidereal compasses, where specific stars were associated with points on the horizon, allowing them to maintain a constant heading day and night. It wasn't just Polaris for them. It was a full 360-degree celestial reference system. You learn to identify dozens, perhaps hundreds, of individual stars, and their precise rising and setting points on the horizon relative to your canoe. As a star rises, it marks a specific house on your mental compass. As it climbs, reaches its zenith, and then sets, it provides a continuous reference point. You internalize these pathways, memorizing the sequence of stars that would lead you to a particular island or back home. It's a bit like having a GPS, but instead of a screen, you've got billions of years of cosmic evolution providing the signal, and your brain is the processor. One quirky tidbit: beyond the stars, these navigators also paid meticulous attention to the planets: Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn. They called them wandering stars and understood their unique movements and cycles. For example, the precise rising or setting of Venus could signal the approach of a specific season or even help confirm a general bearing if other stars were obscured. Imagine using the twinkle of a distant planet to keep you on course for thousands of miles. That's next-level dedication, or perhaps just a very strong desire not to get lost at sea. The concept of the star compass isn't just about individual stars, though. It's about understanding the entire celestial sphere as a dynamic, living map. You learn that certain stars always rise and set in the same places year after year, providing reliable fixed points. Others, like the Southern Cross, Te Waka o Temeraire in Maori, or the Canoe of Temeraire, rotate around a specific celestial pole, allowing you to gauge latitude. Historians still argue whether the star compass was a unified, pan-Polynesian system taught with minor variations, or if distinct, regional variations evolved independently among different island groups. What is certain, however, is its incredible effectiveness. During the day, when the stars disappear, you don't just drift aimlessly. You've internalized those celestial pathways. You project them onto the sun's position. The sun itself becomes a pointer, and you adjust your heading based on its relative movement across the sky, knowing exactly where it should be at any given hour. This constant, almost unconscious, recalculation is what allows for accuracy over vast, featureless expanses. You learn that navigation isn't a static art. It's a fluid conversation with the heavens. If clouds obscure the stars, you rely on the feel of the swells, which we'll talk about soon. If the sun is hidden, you look for the subtle glow on the underside of clouds. Every piece of environmental data, no matter how faint, is a clue. And at night, when those celestial beacons return, there's a profound sense of reassurance, a reaffirmation that you are part of a grand design, and the universe itself is guiding your journey. This deep, almost spiritual connection to the cosmos made the impossible possible. You're not just observing. You're feeling the turn of the Earth, the immense scale of the solar system, all through the lens of ancient wisdom. The stars are your compass, certainly, but how do you measure anything with precision in the middle of a boundless ocean? This is where the ingenuity of Polynesian navigators truly shines, transforming the simplest objects into sophisticated instruments. Forget the brass and glass of European sextants. You're about to learn about the incredible power of a humble coconut shell. Imagine yourself holding a half coconut shell, smooth and polished from use. It might have a small hole drilled in its center or a string attached. This isn't just a snack container. It's a tool for measuring angles, for understanding your position relative to the celestial dance above. Mainstream historical fact: while direct archaeological evidence of complex navigational instruments is scarce due to the perishable nature of materials, ethnographic accounts and modern reconstructions strongly suggest the use of various simple tools, including a form of star compass crafted from a frame and pegs, and a rudimentary sextant using a coconut shell or a simple horizon stick. It's less about a precise measurement in degrees and more about a repeatable, consistent observation. You're taught to hold the coconut shell at arm's length, sighting along its rim or through a small opening. Perhaps you align the bottom edge with the horizon and the top edge with a specific star. By carefully adjusting your position, or perhaps by using a small, calibrated stick held at arm's length, you can gauge the height of a star above the horizon. This isn't about getting an exact number like 30 degrees, 15 minutes. It's about a qualitative measurement. That star is 2 widths of my hand above the horizon, or the sun at noon is exactly this high. A measurement you can then replicate on another day or at another location. It's a form of relative positioning, incredibly effective when combined with vast memorized data. One quirky tidbit: some navigators may have used their own body parts as measuring devices. A spread hand, a finger's width, the span of an arm. These could all serve as personal, portable measurement standards. Your body, therefore, becomes an extension of your navigational kit, constantly available and surprisingly consistent. Imagine trying to get a consistent reading while being tossed around by waves. It requires immense practice and a steady hand, a bit like trying to thread a needle on a roller coaster. The real genius here isn't just the tool itself, but the knowledge base that accompanied it. These measurements weren't standalone data points. They were fed into a vast mental database of star paths, ocean swells, and wind patterns. You knew that when the sun reached a specific height at noon, you were at a certain latitude. You knew that when a particular star crossed the meridian at a certain angle, you were aligned with a specific island. Historians still argue whether the complexity of these observational tools indicates an even more advanced, yet lost, system of calculation, or if the power lay almost entirely in the mnemonic devices and repeated observation. What is clear, however, is the sophistication of their approach to what seems like simple observation. Consider the precision required. To hit a tiny speck of land, perhaps only a few miles wide, after sailing thousands of miles, means your cumulative errors have to be minimal. The coconut shell, or the stick, or even just your outstretched hand, allowed for that consistent, repeatable observation. It taught you to feel the angle, to recognize the visual cues, and to connect them to the vast tapestry of the known world and the routes that crisscrossed it. As you practice, you start to feel the rhythm of observation. The rising and setting of celestial bodies, the subtle shift in their height through the night. It all becomes a part of your internal clock, your internal compass. You're not just looking, you're feeling the universe turn around you. This isn't abstract mathematics. It's embodied knowledge, learned through years of apprenticeship, observation, and direct experience on the unpredictable, yet ultimately readable, ocean. The coconut shell, simple as it seems, embodies a philosophy of navigation that is deeply connected to the natural world, a testament to how profound understanding can arise from the humblest of origins. It's pretty amazing, isn't it, what you can do with a bit of ingenuity and a very keen eye. So, you've got the stars, the sun, and your trusty coconut shell, but what happens when the clouds roll in, blotting out the celestial guides? This is where the ocean itself becomes your map, a living, breathing entity that whispers secrets to those who know how to listen. You're now learning to read the ocean swells and currents, a form of navigation so subtle, so intuitive, that it almost feels like magic. Imagine yourself on the canoe, eyes closed, just feeling the rhythm of the waves. Mainstream historical fact: Polynesian navigators could distinguish between various swell patterns, not just wind-generated choppiness, but the underlying, persistent swells that travel thousands of miles across the open ocean. Originating from distant storm systems, these deep ocean swells, unaffected by local winds, refract around islands, creating unique patterns that could signal the presence of land long before it was visible. It's like feeling the ripples from a stone dropped far, far away. You learn to feel the direction of these primary swells as they pass beneath the hull. A large, consistent swell might be coming from the east, telling you that strong, steady trade winds are blowing in that direction, even if your local winds are calm or variable. But then you notice a different, smaller set of swells, coming from a slightly different angle. This secondary swell might be reflecting off a distant island, bending around its landmass and creating a unique signature. It's an acoustic map, but for water. One quirky tidbit: some navigators would lie down in the hull of the canoe, pressing their ear to the bottom to better feel the subtle vibrations and distinct patterns of the swells. Imagine essentially becoming one with the boat, letting your body absorb the information the ocean is transmitting. It's a level of sensory awareness that most of us, glued to our screens, have completely lost. And it takes incredible dedication to train yourself to differentiate between dozens of subtle wave patterns. You're not just feeling the swells, though. You're also keenly aware of the ocean currents. You learn to drop a line with a small object, like a piece of coconut fiber, to observe the direction and speed of the current relative to your canoe. You also monitor the presence of marine life. Certain types of jellyfish or seaweed might only be found in specific current flows. Knowing the predictable currents and factoring in how they might push you off course is crucial for long-distance accuracy. It's like knowing the invisible rivers flowing beneath the surface. Historians still argue whether some of the more advanced swell reading techniques, such as those used on the Marshall Islands with their famous stick charts, were known and utilized throughout wider Polynesia, or if they were highly localized innovations. What is clear, however, is the fundamental understanding of how ocean dynamics could be harnessed for navigation. This sensory navigation is a continuous process. You're always feeling, always observing, always adjusting. A subtle change in the wave pattern might tell you you're approaching the lee side of an island, where the swells are dampened. A different pattern might indicate you're nearing a channel between islands. It's a constant dialogue with the sea, a language spoken in the language of water. It's a testament to their deep connection with their environment that they could interpret these incredibly subtle cues. It required years of training, not just in theory, but in practice on the open ocean, under the guidance of experienced masters. You develop an almost preternatural sensitivity, where the canoe becomes an extension of your own body, and the ocean's pulses are felt deep within your bones. The wind on your skin, the salt on your lips, the ceaseless motion of the waves, it all contributes to a holistic understanding of your position and direction. It's less like reading a map and more like listening to a symphony, where every note, every ripple, has meaning. You've mastered the stars, you're feeling the swells, but what about the first sign of actual land when it's still far beyond the visible horizon? This is where the keen observation of bird flight and other natural phenomena comes into play, turning every living thing into a potential harbinger of discovery. Your eyes aren't just scanning the waves, they're scanning the air, the water surface, and even the subtle changes in the very light around you. Imagine yourself straining your eyes against the vastness, hoping for a sign. Mainstream historical fact: Polynesian navigators meticulously observed the flight patterns of seabirds, particularly those that roost on land but feed at sea. Birds like the frigabird, the tern, or the booby would fly out to feed in the morning and return to their roosting islands in the evening. By noting their direction of flight at dusk and dawn, navigators could determine the bearing of unseen land. It's a bit like having feathered drones scouting ahead for you, transmitting their findings with every wing beat. You learn to differentiate between birds that simply fish in the open ocean and those that must return to land. A lone bird flying purposefully in one direction at sunrise is a much stronger indicator than a flock haphazardly circling a patch of fish. You'd observe their behavior. Are they flying high and fast, eager to get home, or lazily circling? These subtle cues were critical. And if you spotted a land bird, like a swallow or a small heron, far out at sea, that was a truly thrilling moment, a sure sign that land was very, very near, as these birds typically wouldn't venture far from shore. One quirky tidbit: some accounts suggest that navigators would even carry caged birds, such as frigabirds, on their voyages. When they believed land was near but couldn't see it, they would release the bird. If the bird flew off purposefully in a certain direction and didn't return, it was a strong indicator of land in that bearing. If it circled and came back to the canoe, it meant no land was close enough to sense. It's a primitive but incredibly effective form of biological sonar, a living homing device. But it wasn't just birds. You're also taught to look for specific types of clouds. Low-lying, stationary clouds might indicate an island beneath them, especially if they have a greenish tint, reflecting the light off a lagoon. You're watching for unusual atmospheric phenomena, like a faint, localized haze on the horizon, or the distinctive shimmer of light that indicates a large landmass disrupting air currents. Even the color of the sky at sunrise or sunset can give clues. A greener hue might hint at a vegetated island reflecting sunlight upwards. Historians still argue whether the concept of island-finding waves was universally understood across all Polynesian cultures, where specific wave patterns were thought to propagate from islands beyond the visible horizon. While the general principle of swell refraction was certainly key, the precise interpretation and reliance on these island waves might have varied. What is undeniable, however, is the holistic approach to environmental cues. You're also constantly checking the water itself. Are there changes in the color of the water, perhaps a lighter blue indicating shallower depths or a warmer temperature due to a nearby landmass? Are there different types of floating debris, not just random flotsam, but specific pieces of driftwood or vegetation that look freshly broken from shore? Even the smell of the air could change, carrying the scent of rich soil or vegetation long before the island itself appeared. It's a symphony of subtle signals, and your senses are the orchestra, interpreting every note. The ability to combine these various clues, the flight of a bird, the shape of a cloud, the feel of a particular swell, the smell of the air, allowed these navigators to effectively extend their range of detection by hundreds of miles. This meant less time aimlessly searching and more time making a direct course for new lands. It's an incredible testament to their observational skills, patience, and deep respect for the natural world. You realize that true navigation isn't just about reading instruments, it's about becoming intimately attuned to every single whisper the environment sends your way. You've got your bearings, you're reading the environmental signs, but now comes the truly practical challenge. How do you survive for weeks, even months, on a small canoe in the middle of nowhere? This is where the meticulous art of provisioning for long journeys becomes paramount, turning your vessel into a self-sustaining miniature world. Failure to plan means failure to survive, and these ancient mariners were masters of foresight. Imagine the bustling activity on shore before departure. It's not just a matter of tossing some food into a basket. Mainstream historical fact: Polynesian voyagers carried a diverse array of cultivated plants and domesticated animals, effectively transporting entire ecosystems across the ocean. These canoe plants included staples like taro, breadfruit, yams, and sweet potatoes, along with coconut and ti plants, crucial for food, fiber, and medicine. For protein, pigs, chickens, and the Polynesian dog were common passengers, usually kept in secure, well-ventilated pens on the deck. It's essentially Noah's Ark, but for colonization. You're involved in the painstaking process of preparing and loading. Water, of course, is critical. You fill gourds and hollow bamboo containers with fresh water, sealing them carefully. But you also know that you can replenish supplies from the heavens. Large pandanus sails can be furled to collect rainwater, directed into storage. And for those times when fresh water runs low, you learn to exploit an emergency resource: the fluid from green coconuts, though this is carefully rationed. One quirky tidbit: some accounts suggest that navigators might have stored water in large, hollowed-out tree trunks, or even in specific types of large clam shells, demonstrating an incredibly resourceful approach to a vital commodity. Food preservation is another key skill. You're not packing refrigerated meats. Instead, you're dealing with dried fish, sun-cured fruits, and fermented breadfruit paste, known as mahi. This paste, often stored in large, sealed pits on the canoe, could last for months, providing a dense, energy-rich food source, albeit one with a rather distinctive aroma after a few weeks at sea. Think of it as ancient hardtack, but probably a bit more flavorful. You might even laugh at how much it resembles a very lumpy, slightly sour Play-Doh. Beyond food and water, you're also packing tools, extra core rope, fishing gear, adzes for repairs, and medicinal plants. There are seeds for new crops, cuttings for new trees, and even small amounts of fertile soil to give those cuttings a head start on arrival. Every inch of space on the canoe is maximized, every item considered for its utility and versatility. Historians still argue whether the provisioning was solely for establishing new settlements, or if there was also a component of trading or exchanging goods with existing island populations encountered along the way. What is clear, however, is the meticulous attention to detail in ensuring self-sufficiency. Life on board is carefully regulated. Food and water are rationed. Fishing is a daily activity, supplementing the stored provisions and providing fresh protein. You're constantly vigilant for edible marine life, recognizing that the ocean itself is a pantry. Discipline is key. There's no room for waste or carelessness when your lives depend on every coconut and every drop of water. This meticulous planning isn't just about survival. It's about the very success of the mission. Landing on a new, uninhabited island with a healthy stock of plants and animals meant the difference between quickly establishing a viable new community and perishing from starvation. The voyagers understood that the journey didn't end when they sighted land. It ended when they had successfully transplanted their civilization to a new home. You feel the weight of this responsibility, the immense trust placed in every person aboard, knowing that the survival of their entire lineage might depend on the successful delivery of that squealing pig or those fragile taro shoots. With the canoe laden and the provisions meticulously stowed, you now step fully into the floating world. This isn't just a vessel, it's a micro-society, and understanding the social structures on board is crucial to the success of the journey. Life on a voyaging canoe was a testament to communal living, strict discipline, and a clear hierarchy, all designed to navigate both the physical and human challenges of the open ocean. Imagine the cramped but organized space. There's no room for individualism or dissent when survival hangs by a thread. Mainstream historical fact: a typical voyaging canoe would carry a diverse crew, usually numbering from dozens to sometimes over 100 individuals. This included not only skilled navigators and experienced sailors, but also various specialists: farmers to tend the canoe plants, artisans to make and repair tools, and elders who carried the accumulated knowledge of their lineage. It was a floating cross-section of their society, carefully selected for resilience and communal harmony. At the apex of this floating hierarchy was the master navigator, the kahuna hukil or punahele. Their authority was absolute, for their knowledge of the stars, swells, and routes was the lifeline of the entire expedition. You observe them, learning their quiet commands, their focused intensity. Every decision they make, from adjusting the sail to altering course, is based on centuries of accumulated wisdom and their acute interpretation of the environment. Disobeying a navigator's command was unthinkable, a direct threat to the lives of all on board. One quirky tidbit: to maintain morale and social cohesion during long, monotonous voyages, storytelling and traditional chants were incredibly important. The elders would recount the epic tales of previous voyages, the myths of creation, and the genealogies of their people. These weren't just bedtime stories. They served to reinforce cultural identity, remind everyone of their shared purpose, and transmit vital information, like the location of specific islands or the characteristics of certain currents, embedded within memorable narratives. Imagine a lively sing-along on a tiny canoe in the middle of a vast ocean, a rhythmic counterpoint to the endless waves. It probably helped drown out the smell of fermented breadfruit, too. Beneath the navigator, there would be experienced crew members, each with specific duties: managing the sails, bailing water, fishing, or tending to the livestock. Even the children on board had roles, often learning by observation, absorbing the skills and knowledge that would be vital for their generation to continue the voyaging tradition. It was a constant apprenticeship, a living school on the high seas. Historians still argue whether the social structure on these voyages was rigidly hierarchical with a supreme chief in command, or if it was a more collaborative system where consensus among skilled individuals, especially the navigators, was paramount. What is clear, however, is the necessity of a defined order to manage the inherent challenges of deep ocean travel. Disputes had to be resolved quickly and fairly, as simmering tensions could endanger everyone. There was an emphasis on communal well-being over individual desire. Resources, like food and water, were shared equally and strictly rationed. Every individual understood their place and their contribution to the collective goal of reaching a new home. You feel the palpable sense of shared destiny, the quiet determination that binds everyone together. Life wasn't always easy. There were storms, periods of calm that tested patience, and the constant threat of the unknown. But within the confines of the canoe, a resilient community thrived, bound by purpose and a shared understanding of their extraordinary mission. They were more than just passengers. They were participants in a grand human endeavor, each playing a vital role in expanding the known world. It's a reminder that even in the most challenging environments, human societies find ways to organize, adapt, and push the boundaries of what is possible. And as you drift further into the silence, you appreciate the quiet hum of this ancient, floating community. You've heard the tales, seen the canoes, and sensed the incredible knowledge of these ancient mariners. Yet, a persistent whisper sometimes echoes through modern interpretations: the idea that these vast journeys were merely accidental discoveries, lucky drifts across the Pacific. Tonight, you're going to dismiss that notion entirely, because nothing could be further from the truth. The myth of accidental discovery diminishes the truly monumental achievements of Polynesian navigation. Imagine a dartboard the size of the entire Pacific Ocean, with tiny, widely scattered targets representing islands. Now imagine throwing a dart blindfolded from a canoe, hoping to hit one. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? Mainstream historical fact: The prevailing scientific and ethnographic evidence overwhelmingly supports the theory of intentional, two-way voyaging, driven by sophisticated navigational techniques and a deliberate desire to explore and settle. The idea of accidental discovery gained traction in earlier European interpretations, largely because it was unfathomable to them that primitive peoples could accomplish such feats without Western technology. It was a narrative that conveniently ignored indigenous knowledge. If these voyages were accidental, how would groups of people, complete with plants and animals, consistently manage to find and settle new islands thousands of miles away? And even more importantly, how would they manage to return to their home islands, often over equally vast distances, to report their findings and lead subsequent waves of migration? Accidental drifts are, by their nature, one-way tickets to oblivion. The archaeological record shows a clear pattern of planned colonization, not random dispersal. You're talking about an entire civilization moving, not just a few lost sailors. One quirky tidbit: the very structure of the Polynesian languages, which are remarkably similar across vast stretches of the Pacific, provides linguistic evidence of sustained contact and deliberate migration patterns. If groups were simply drifting and losing contact, you'd expect much greater linguistic divergence over time. Instead, the commonalities suggest consistent back-and-forth travel and communication, a clear indicator of intentionality. Imagine trying to explain complex navigational techniques to someone whose language was entirely alien to yours after an accidental drift. It simply doesn't add up. Consider the skills we've already discussed: the intricate star compasses, the reading of subtle ocean swells, the observation of bird flight, the careful provisioning. These are not the actions of people hoping for the best. These are the hallmarks of meticulous planning, vast accumulated knowledge, and generations of training. You don't accidentally develop a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics or wave refraction. You develop it through dedicated study, experimentation, and transmission of knowledge. Historians still argue whether the initial push into the Central Pacific was a single, rapid expansion event or a series of more gradual, interconnected voyages over a longer period. However, the debate centers on the pace and nature of intentional voyaging, not on whether it was intentional at all. Think about the sheer courage it took to set out into an empty ocean, knowing that the nearest land might be weeks away, and that your survival depended entirely on your knowledge and the strength of your vessel. That's not accidental. That's a calculated risk, a monumental act of faith in your abilities and your traditions. You feel the grit and determination of these voyagers, a stark contrast to the passive image often portrayed. The myth of accidental discovery is slowly but surely being dismantled by modern scholarship and, crucially, by the revival of traditional voyaging techniques by indigenous communities themselves. When you see a modern replica canoe, navigated by a trained Hawaiian or Maori crew using only ancient methods, successfully crossing thousands of miles of open ocean, it becomes undeniably clear: these were master mariners, not lucky castaways. They were explorers of the highest order, charting the largest ocean on Earth with a precision that still astounds us today. And as you feel the canoe sway beneath you, you realize you're part of a deliberate journey, one steeped in purpose and profound knowledge. Now that you've shed the notion of accidental discovery, let's marvel at the sheer scale of their intentional achievements. Your journey now takes you further east, into the vast, lonely stretches of the Pacific that truly define the audacity of Polynesian exploration, the Eastern Pacific expansions. This was not merely island hopping. This was pushing into the true void, discovering some of the most isolated landmasses on Earth. Imagine the immense courage it took to sail beyond the known world, knowing there might be nothing but endless ocean for thousands of miles. Mainstream historical fact: the greatest testament to Polynesian navigational skill lies in the settlement of extremely isolated islands, such as Rapa Nui, Easter Island, located more than 2,000 miles from the nearest inhabited landmass, Pitcairn Island, and even further from its presumed Polynesian homeland. This was the farthest outpost of human expansion on Earth until the European age of exploration, a truly staggering achievement of deep ocean voyaging. You're pushing eastward, feeling the subtle shift in the winds as you cross different climatic zones. The familiar swells from the west might give way to new patterns, originating from distant, previously unencountered storm systems. The stars overhead slowly shift, new constellations becoming prominent as you gain longitude. This journey isn't just about finding land. It's about adapting to an ever-changing, vast environment. One quirky tidbit: the settlement of Rapa Nui, in particular, showcases an incredible feat of two-way voyaging. Genetic and archaeological evidence suggests that after the initial discovery, there were likely several subsequent, intentional voyages to and from the island, reinforcing the population and bringing in new resources. Imagine discovering a new world, then turning around and sailing back across thousands of miles of empty ocean just to tell everyone about it and bring more people and supplies. That's commitment, or perhaps just a very bad sense of direction for the return trip, though unlikely given their skills. The push into the Eastern Pacific wasn't a single event, but a series of interconnected voyages over centuries, radiating out from a homeland Hawaii, believed to be somewhere in West Polynesia. From islands like the Marquesas and the Society Islands, the lines of exploration stretched outwards like the spokes of an immense wheel. You feel the relentless drive, the insatiable curiosity that propelled these people into the unknown. Historians still argue whether the Eastern Pacific expansion was a single, rapid phase of exploration driven by specific cultural or environmental pressures, or if it was a more protracted process involving multiple waves of independent exploration. What is clear, however, is that these were not random drifts. They were orchestrated movements into uninhabited territories. The sheer number of distinct island groups discovered and settled, from the Cook Islands to Mangariva, Pitcairn, and ultimately Rapa Nui, speaks to an unparalleled mastery of navigation. As you sail, you visualize the ancient charts drawn in the minds of the navigators, not on parchment. These mental maps are filled with not just islands, but wind patterns, current directions, and the precise paths of stars for different seasons. They understood the interconnectedness of the ocean and its atmosphere in a way that modern science is only now beginning to fully appreciate. The arrival at these remote islands wasn't just a triumph of navigation, it was a testament to resilience. After weeks or months at sea, seeing the faint outline of land on the horizon must have been an emotional, almost spiritual experience. You feel that surge of hope and relief, the culmination of countless hours of planning, observation, and sheer perseverance. These pioneers didn't just discover new lands. They expanded the very boundaries of human possibility, demonstrating that with enough ingenuity and courage, no ocean was too vast, no island too remote. The wind whispers tales of these ancient heroes, urging you further into the mysteries of the Pacific. From the far-flung reaches of the Eastern Pacific, your imaginary canoe now turns its prow towards one of the most celebrated and arguably most significant discoveries of the Polynesian voyagers, the verdant, volcanic archipelago of Hawaii. This wasn't just another island group. It was a journey to the very apex of the Polynesian Triangle, a destination that demanded the utmost skill and courage. Imagine the vast expanse of ocean between the Marquesas or Society Islands and the distant North Pacific, a seemingly endless void. Mainstream historical fact: the settlement of the Hawaiian Islands, known in ancient times as Hawaii Loa, among other names, represents one of the longest intentional open ocean voyages in human history. Early migrations are believed to have originated from the Marquesas Islands around 100 to 300 CE, covering a staggering distance of over 2,000 nautical miles against prevailing winds and currents. Later waves of migration, particularly from the Society Islands, further solidified the population and cultural practices around 1100 to 1200 CE. It's like finding a series of stepping stones, then taking an Olympic leap. You're sailing north, a direction that fundamentally changes the celestial landscape. The familiar Southern Cross begins to dip lower, eventually disappearing below the northern horizon. In its place, the North Star, Polaris, a stationary beacon for northern navigators, becomes visible, albeit low on the horizon. This required a complete reorientation of their star compasses and a mastery of new celestial cues. You feel the subtle shift in the air, the gradual change from tropical warmth to a slightly cooler, drier climate as you move north. One quirky tidbit: the Hawaiian Navigators developed their own unique set of names for stars and constellations, perfectly adapted to their specific latitude. While the underlying principles of the star compass remained, the specific celestial bodies they relied upon shifted, demonstrating their adaptability and depth of astronomical knowledge. They essentially created a customized GPS system for their northern journey. And honestly, trying to remember all those new star names after a few weeks at sea, I'd probably be using the really bright one over there as my primary reference. The challenging aspect of the Hawaiian migration wasn't just the distance, but the nature of the target. Unlike a chain of islands where you could potentially island hop, the Hawaiian archipelago stands in relative isolation. Finding it required remarkable precision and the ability to detect faint signs of land at great distances, using all the techniques we've discussed, magnified by the sheer emptiness surrounding them. Historians still argue whether the initial Hawaiian voyagers deliberately sought out these northern islands through exploratory probes, or if they were driven northward by powerful currents or storm systems that, once survived, led to accidental discovery, followed by intentional return voyages. However, the consistent presence of specific canoe plants and animals, and the linguistic ties, strongly support intentional and repeated voyages. The very existence of Hawaiian culture, deeply rooted in its Polynesian origins, is a testament to successful colonization, not random chance. As you near the target, you're looking for the telltale signs: the unique cloud formations that cap the high volcanic peaks, the subtle changes in swell patterns as they interact with the massive landforms, and the distinctive flight paths of migratory seabirds. The smell of volcanic earth and lush vegetation, carried on the wind, must have been an intoxicating signal after weeks of open ocean. The arrival in Hawaii was not merely a discovery. It was the creation of a new cultural heartland, a vibrant civilization that adapted Polynesian traditions to a unique environment. These voyagers brought with them not just people and plants, but their entire way of life, seeding a new branch of the Polynesian family tree. You feel the culmination of generations of dreams and daring as your canoe finally glides into a tranquil, emerald green bay, the towering cliffs rising majestically above, a welcoming embrace after an epic, unparalleled journey. You've witnessed the daring push to the North Pacific, but now your compass, or rather, your internal star map, points southwest. We're embarking on another monumental journey, one that led Polynesian navigators to the largest and southernmost landmass they would discover: New Zealand, or Aotearoa, as it's known to its indigenous Maori people. This voyage was a testament to resilience, adapting to new environmental challenges, and truly pushing the limits of their traditional navigation. Imagine the sheer difference in climate as you sail further south. The warm, predictable trade winds of the tropics give way to cooler, more tempestuous conditions. The sun's arc across the sky becomes lower, and new stars emerge in the southern heavens, demanding a fresh mastery of celestial navigation. Mainstream historical fact: the ancestors of the Maori are believed to have made the long voyage from East Polynesia, likely from the Society or Cook Islands, to Aotearoa around the 13th century CE. This was a sustained, deliberate journey of thousands of miles into colder, more unpredictable waters, a significant departure from their typical tropical environment. You're battling stronger winds and larger swells, waves that feel distinctly different from the gentle rhythms of the Central Pacific. The canoe itself must be handled with even greater skill, constantly adjusting the sail and bailing water to prevent swamping. You feel the bite of the cooler air, a stark contrast to the balmy nights you've grown accustomed to. One quirky tidbit: the Maori tradition recounts the names of specific voyaging canoes, such as the Te Arawa, Tainui, Matachua, Kurahapo, Tikitamu, and Tokomaru, as part of their ancestral narratives. These aren't just stories. They serve as a historical record, remembering the specific vessels and the groups who made the perilous journey. It's like having a roll call of founding ships, but passed down through generations of oral tradition. Imagine your great-great-great-great-grandparents telling you about their canoe and the journey they made, every detail etched into collective memory. The search for Aotearoa would have relied heavily on the signs of land we've discussed, but in a temperate climate, these signs might have been different. Perhaps different migratory bird species, unique cloud formations indicative of large land masses, or distinct swell patterns refracting off a massive continental shelf rather than small volcanic islands. This demanded an adaptability in observation, a willingness to interpret familiar cues in new ways. Historians still argue whether there was a single great fleet that arrived in Aotearoa, or if it was a series of smaller, more dispersed voyages over a period of time. However, the linguistic and cultural coherence of the Maori people strongly suggests a significant, if not unified, migration event followed by continued cultural exchange within the new land. What is clear, however, is the profound significance of this final major expansion. As you draw closer, the land that emerges from the mist would have been unlike anything they had encountered before. Not small, lush volcanic islands, but a vast, mountainous land covered in dense, temperate rainforests, with snow-capped peaks and long, winding rivers. Aotearoa was a dramatic new frontier, a stark contrast to their tropical homelands. You feel the awe, perhaps a touch of trepidation, as this immense, untamed landscape reveals itself. The settlement of Aotearoa wasn't just about reaching land. It was about adapting to a completely new environment. The canoe plants they brought from the tropics had to be carefully cultivated and sometimes modified to survive the colder climate, and new food sources, like the native kamara, sweet potato, became vital. This final journey represents the zenith of Polynesian exploration, a testament to their enduring spirit of adventure, their unparalleled navigational prowess, and their remarkable ability to adapt and thrive in diverse new worlds. And as you imagine the first footsteps on that wild, beautiful shore, you understand the magnitude of what they achieved. You've traveled with them across the vast Pacific, from tiny specks of land to monumental new continents. You've witnessed the apex of their navigational genius. But like all eras of profound human achievement, there came a time when some of this incredible knowledge began to fade, to become lost knowledge, marking the end of an era. This isn't about a sudden collapse, but a gradual erosion of practices as the world around them shifted. Imagine the centuries passing after the great voyages. The vast distances have been mapped, the major islands settled. The immediate imperative to explore and expand new territories diminishes. Mainstream historical fact: with the major island groups settled and established, the necessity for long-distance, open ocean voyaging significantly decreased in many Polynesian societies. This led to a gradual decline in the practice and transmission of some of the most complex navigational techniques, as generations focused more on inter-island travel within established networks rather than venturing into the unknown. The demand for the specialized skills of a kahuna hukeel for truly epic journeys lessened. You can picture the master navigators, the punahele, still teaching their apprentices, but perhaps the urgency isn't the same. The pressure to prepare for a multi-month journey across thousands of miles is different from teaching someone to navigate between neighboring islands, even if those are still significant distances. The intricate star paths for far-off lands, the subtle swell patterns that signaled islands beyond the horizon, these might have become less critical for daily life, and thus less frequently practiced and remembered. One quirky tidbit: the arrival of European explorers, with their metal tools, sails, and, perhaps most significantly, their written charts and compasses, had an unexpected and arguably detrimental effect on the transmission of indigenous navigational knowledge. While early encounters sometimes involved an exchange of information, the perceived superiority of European technology, and later, the imposition of colonial rule, often led to a devaluing of traditional methods. Imagine a young Polynesian apprentice seeing a European compass, thinking, "Wow, that's much easier than memorizing 100 stars." It's a bit like us abandoning manual stick shifts for automatic cars, then forgetting how to drive stick entirely. The oral tradition, while incredibly robust, also relies on continuous practice and demonstration. If a specific skill isn't regularly exercised, its nuances can be lost. The collective memory might retain the story of the great voyages, but the detailed how-to could become fragmented. Historians still argue whether the decline of deep-sea voyaging was primarily due to environmental factors, like resource depletion on certain islands, socio-political changes within island societies, or the eventual impact of European contact. What is clear, however, is that by the time European explorers like Captain Cook extensively mapped the Pacific, the era of widespread deep ocean Polynesian discovery had largely concluded. You feel a sense of melancholy as this ancient wisdom begins to dim. The intricate star compasses, once vibrant mental maps, become less defined. The subtle language of the swells, once perfectly understood, starts to sound like a jumble of whispers. It's not that the knowledge was deliberately abandoned, but rather, as the context for its most complex applications changed, its daily necessity waned. The canoes themselves, while still used for inter-island trade and fishing, might not have been built for the same colossal, multi-month voyages. The grand designs and the specialized crews required for such endeavors became less common. The skills of provisioning for extended periods, of surviving the true isolation of the deep ocean, became less practiced. It's a reminder that knowledge, however profound, is a living thing, nurtured by practice and necessity. When those change, even the most incredible abilities can fade into the realm of legend. And as you imagine the last master navigator of a certain lineage passing on without a full apprentice, you feel a quiet, almost imperceptible closing of a magnificent chapter in human history. You felt the fading of ancient wisdom, a quiet sorrow in the wake of such incredible achievement. But fear not, for the story of Polynesian navigation doesn't end there. In recent decades, a remarkable movement has emerged: the modern revival efforts, a dedicated push to reclaim and revitalize the very knowledge we thought was lost. This is about more than just building boats. It's about reconnecting with an identity, a legacy, and proving the impossible was, in fact, real. Imagine the humble beginnings of this revival in the late 20th century. Mainstream historical fact: the modern Polynesian voyaging renaissance largely began with the construction and maiden voyage of the Hkli, a double-hulled voyaging canoe, built as a replica of ancient designs. Launched in Hawaii in 1975, its first major voyage in 1976 from Hawaii to Tahiti, navigated without modern instruments by Maupielug, a Micronesian master navigator from Satawal, proved unequivocally that intentional, non-instrument navigation across vast ocean distances was not only possible, but historically accurate. It was a mic drop heard across the Pacific. You can almost hear the excited chatter, the fervent debates among cultural leaders and scholars who dreamed of bringing these traditions back to life. It wasn't easy. Much of the specific knowledge had indeed been lost or fragmented. They had to piece together information from oral histories, early European accounts, and anthropological studies. They had to learn by doing, much like the original voyagers, but without the benefit of continuous generations of mentors. You feel the passion and dedication of these modern pioneers, refusing to let their heritage vanish. One quirky tidbit: the initial success of the Hkli led to a profound shift in academic understanding. Before Maupielug's successful navigation, many Western academics still clung to the accidental drift theory. His skill, learned from an unbroken lineage of navigators in Micronesia, where the traditional art had survived, provided the undeniable living proof that forced a complete reevaluation of Polynesian capabilities. Imagine being a renowned historian, only for a living, breathing master to literally sail into view and show you that everything you believed was wrong. Talk about a wake-up call. The construction of these replica canoes is an art in itself. You see modern craftsmen, guided by elders and historical blueprints, meticulously lashing hulls together, weaving sails from traditional materials where possible, and rediscovering the nuances of ancient boat building. It's a blend of old and new, using modern tools for efficiency, but adhering to traditional designs and principles. Historians still argue whether these modern replicas, despite their fidelity, truly replicate the exact handling and performance characteristics of their ancient counterparts, given differences in materials and construction techniques. However, their proven ability to cross oceans using traditional navigation methods stands as a powerful testament. These revival efforts aren't just about the technology of the canoe, they're about the revival of the people. Young Polynesians are now being trained in ancient navigation techniques, learning to read the stars, feel the swells, and observe the signs of land, just like their ancestors. You watch as they intently study the celestial sphere, practice knot tying, and learn the names of stars in their ancestral languages. It's a reclamation of identity, a reawakening of pride in their heritage. The voyage is undertaken by Hkli and subsequent sister canoes, like Hikianalia and Fate, are not just symbolic. They are living classrooms, carrying new generations of navigators, sharing cultural messages, and even conducting scientific research on ocean health. You feel the current of hope, the vibrant energy of a people reconnecting with their roots and sailing bravely into the future, guided by the wisdom of the past. It's a powerful narrative of resilience, proving that even when knowledge seems lost, the human spirit, fueled by cultural pride, can always find a way to bring it back to life. You've come full circle, from the boundless ocean to the vibrant efforts of reclamation. Now, as our journey nears its end, let's reflect on the profound and enduring lasting legacy of Polynesian navigators and how their incredible feats continue to echo through our modern world, shaping our understanding of human capability and indigenous knowledge. Imagine standing on a contemporary Hawaiian beach, watching a traditional voyaging canoe, perhaps the Hkli, glide into the harbor after a long voyage. Mainstream historical fact: the legacy of Polynesian navigation extends far beyond merely discovering islands. It fundamentally reshaped the genetic, linguistic, and cultural landscape of the entire Pacific. Their achievements represent the most expansive maritime migration in human history, populating an area roughly equivalent to the entire landmass of North and South America, all without the aid of European technology. This wasn't just exploration. It was the largest act of sustained human colonization on the planet, predating any other comparable feat by millennia. You feel a sense of awe at the sheer scale of their impact. Every island you might visit in the Pacific, from the tiniest atoll to the largest volcanic peaks, bears the indelible mark of these ancient voyagers. The languages spoken, the plants cultivated, the societal structures, the deep connection to the ocean, all are direct descendants of those intrepid journeys. It's a living, breathing testament to their enduring influence. One quirky tidbit: the precise genetic pathways of Polynesian expansion continue to be a subject of fascinating scientific research. Modern DNA studies have helped trace the routes of migration, confirming ancient oral traditions and even revealing unexpected connections, such as the contact between Polynesians and indigenous peoples of South America, evidenced by the presence of pre-Columbian chickens in the Pacific and sweet potatoes in Polynesia. Imagine, they weren't just exploring, they were connecting continents before any European even thought about it. It makes you wonder what else they quietly achieved that we're only just now uncovering. Their legacy challenges our perceptions of primitive technology. They remind us that sophistication isn't always about complex machinery, but often about profound observation, meticulous memory, and an intimate understanding of the natural world. The coconut shell and the stars, in the hands of a master navigator, were more effective than many of the early instruments used by European explorers. Historians still argue whether the Polynesians' ability to sail against prevailing winds and currents suggests a lost knowledge of tacking techniques more advanced than previously thought, or if it was primarily a testament to their deep understanding of seasonal wind shifts. What is clear, however, is their unparalleled mastery of their environment. The revival of voyaging arts has sparked a wave of cultural pride and renewed interest in indigenous knowledge systems. You see young people, once perhaps disconnected from their heritage, now eagerly learning the ways of their ancestors, finding strength and identity in these incredible achievements. This movement is not just historical. It's a powerful statement about resilience, self-determination, and the enduring value of traditional wisdom in a rapidly modernizing world. As you reflect, you realize that the story of Polynesian navigators isn't just a historical footnote. It's a powerful narrative about humanity's innate drive to explore, to innovate, and to connect. It teaches us about courage in the face of the unknown, the ingenuity born of necessity, and the profound wisdom that comes from living in harmony with the natural world. Their voyages were not merely journeys across water. They were journeys of the human spirit, charting a course for civilization itself. leaving an indelible mark on the global map and within the heart of every person who hears their incredible tale. They remind us that the greatest adventures are often found not in conquering, but in understanding, in listening to the whispers of the wind, the rhythm of the waves, and the eternal song of the stars. The gentle sway of the canoe lessens now, the rhythmic lapping of water against the hull softening to a murmur. The stars, those countless, silent guides, begin to blur at the edges, their sharp points dissolving into a milky haze. You can feel the warmth of the day's sun fading, replaced by a cool, comforting calm that washes over you. Let your mind drift from the vast ocean, from the ancient voices, and just settle into the quiet stillness that now embraces you. The echoes of those epic journeys, the whispers of the wind, the soft hum of the waves, they are fading now, dissolving into the quiet spaces of your imagination. There's no more striving, no more searching for distant horizons, only the gentle, rhythmic breathe of the night. Feel yourself sinking deeper, heavier, as the stories of exploration give way to the comfort of the present moment. Just ease into this quiet peace, letting go of any lingering thoughts, allowing yourself to simply float on the calm surface of a dream. Rest now. The journey is complete, and the night holds you gently. End of script. Sweet dreams.